Hello my good students, I hope you all are doing well. This is a short video where I go over constructors in Java. So what I started doing is to write up some documents where I am going to talk about the way I'm laying things out, and then we will take a look at some examples to see how they are actually working. So when we talk about constructors in Java, we say that it is something very similar to a method. However, the difference between a constructor and a regular method is in constructor, you can never have a return value. However, in methods, you can actually have return values. But otherwise, it is very similar to methods. With constructors, it allows you to create your objects in the memory. That is why it does not let you return any values. So basically, depending upon the class that you have defined with the data attributes and the methods that you declare in your class, an object would be created or object would be instantiated, and the main purpose of the constructor is to have that memory space allocated for the creation of that object during runtime. Okay, so one of the things that you will find in the constructor is that the constructor would always share or have the same name as the class. So the example that I gave you here is when I create this class called name, if you see another method which has the same name, that is your constructor. Okay, so that's your template. So of course, just like your method, you're going to have a name and then open and close parentheses, and this section is going to be the body of the constructor. You can have an empty body, you can have or assign some variables in there. You can so it's completely up to you as to how you want to, or what is it that you want to include in your constructor. And of course, that would be the end of the class. So here's an example that I had shown you here. So this is the name. So this is the class called name. And then inside I have a private data member called my name. And then I create a constructor. Notice that the constructor does not have any arguments in there, but then I do have two statements or two lines inside my constructor. One is a print line showing the constructor is called, and the other one is the allocation where I assign the value Daytona State College to my variable called my name. Now remember, my name is a private string variable that I had defined earlier. In the same class, I now have a public static void main, and this is where within my main method I am actually instantiating an object or creating an object. So object underscore one is the object, which is of the type name class that I had defined earlier. And of course, we have to use the keyword new, and then again repeat the name or the class name, or some people also say this is where you're actually using this constructor here. So this is how you would always instantiate your object. So your class name, your object equals new, and then the constructor name or the class name again. And then within, and after that, you have another system out print line. So in this case, since I have already created my object, now this has to be object underscore one dot not name but my. So these are things that you'll find out as soon as you put it in a compiler and try to run it. So now the value Daytona State College should be coming out. So when I run this program, it should be showing the use of a constructor call, and then it should be bringing this value. The name is object1.myname, which is Daytona State College. So this is what your output is going to be. So let's talk about the different types of constructors. So you can have a no argument constructor. This is an example of a no argument. As you can see, there is no parameters inside. You can also have a parameterized or an argument constructor. You can have a default constructor. So basically what it says is, what it means is, if you do not create a constructor, the compiler is going to create one for you. And of course, you can also overload your constructor. Okay, overloading constructor is not quite the three types. These are pretty much your three types: no argument, a parameterized constructor, or constructor with arguments, and then you have the default where you do not have to give one. And of course, you can overload your constructor but not override them. So let's take an example of a no argument. As I said, the first one could be used as a no argument constructor, which is this class name that I have done. In this one, I am redoing it again. Only thing I changed here is I have added a variable here, but now I have created a private constructor. You would not generally see private constructors. Most of them, they are going to be public. But if you do it as a private, you can use it inside the same class since it's private. If you try to write a separate class, if I try to separate this one out into a different class, it is not going to work since this is a private constructor. Okay, again, not something that you would see a whole lot, but this also could be an example of a no argument constructor. Okay, so talked about how being private, it can be only used within the same class, not outside the class. So here is another example, and in this one I am using a public no argument. So generally this is what you would see most of the time. So you would have a class called name, and then you have a string, and then you have a public constructor. But remember, this is a no argument or no parameter constructor. Another example, but this is public, and again I have assigned the value here. Now this part could be a separate class file. Okay, so this is one file, and this section is one file. I'll show you some more examples of those done separately. Okay, in this case, in the other file, as you can see, this class name test, this is where you have the main method, and this is also where we have created this object called college1. Okay, and then we are using a system out print line to bring out the college name coming from the constructor method is college1.myname. And again, this my name is defined within the constructor. So when you created this object called college1, this my name is going to get this value from your constructor. So that's why it's going to show Daytona State College. Okay. Now let's bring, and again, this is just showing you some Word document as to how this should be working. But let me now bring you some code that I had already written. So here is an example. In this case, I actually tried to put everything in one, but then in the other ones that you have seen here, I have kind of broken them out. So this is my class called name, and these are my two private variables that I had defined. This is an example of a no argument constructor. This is an example of one argument constructor. This is an example of two argument constructor, and this one is also an example of a two argument constructor. But one thing you notice is they are the same. Of course, constructor has to have the same, but they're also overloaded. Okay, so I have flipped the order of my parameters or arguments, and that's also important. If I want to use a particular constructor, Java can keep it straight as long as you follow the signature or the template or the order of arguments. So in this one, when I use this constructor name, I have to pass a string first and then an age. Whereas when I use this particular constructor, I have to pass an age first and then my name. Okay, and then I have done everything in the same class or same program. I have my public static void main, and then I showed an example of, okay, here is an example of my first one, which follows line number 16, which is using this particular constructor right here. Whereas when I create or instantiate this object, this is actually using the signature that I have or the constructor from here, which only takes in one name. So when I create this college campus 2, I'm actually using this string that I'm passing in my argument. Similarly, it keeps on going. This one uses the one template where it uses the string first and then the age, and the other one is the age first and then the string. Okay, so in one example I have given you how it can be done. Now let's look into some of the broken down examples. So in this one I have a public class and then I have some get and set methods. Okay, this is a no argument right here, and then to test this, I'm going to use another file. So let me open the file called test. So this is my file where I do not have a main method. I only have one constructor and then some set methods, some get method, and my set method. And then I wrote another file, and this is the one where you do the name1 test. This is where you have the main method, and then you create your object in this particular class file. And now I just have to use the set my name method and then extract the value with the get my name method. Let's take another example. This is my college, and again this is my college, again all done separately. In this one I'm showing the example of a parameterized or an argument constructor. Okay, so this is my college. It's looking for a first age and then a name, and then of course I have the set get methods, and then I'm testing things out with these two objects that I created. And again I have to pass in the age first and then my string. And of course you can continue on and you'll see how I have shown you examples. All these examples are being uploaded on your under your week 3 content. So if you want to download them and work with them, that's fine as well. Hopefully with these detailed examples you would now have a good understanding of how constructors could be used, what are the different types, and how you can use them in the same program or in 2 separate class files. Preferably, I prefer to have them separated just because it's easy to maintain. I know what my class files are, and I know everything that has a class and a test is where I'm testing the objects or creating my objects. Thank you.